Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Sylvia Rivera. I'm co-founder of Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which is now Street Transgender Action Revolutionaries. And my co-founder was Marsha P. Johnson.
Hey. Yeah. What we do today? Yeah. I'm just trying to make a way, trying to make it out. Welcome back to the welcome back to another episode of Road to William, y'all. I got my baby. My baby. Say hello, everybody. Hello. This is his nap hour. It's like, take a nap there. Welcome back to another episode of Road to William. Today we are putting a spotlight on Sylvia Rivera. I've been on a whole whirlwind. Just doing some research on Sylvia and her legacy. And so we're learning together. That's how this game goes. We're learning together. More in detail, we know that she was really good friends with the late Marsha P. Johnson, and that she was an activist. She was also in the documentary that I said you all need to go check out, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. Talk about Sylvia today.
Story began more than 50 years ago on a hot summer night on June 28, 1969. We are on Christopher Street in the West Village in New York City, and the Public Moral Squad of the NYPD is conducting a raid. This was a very common thing in the 1960s. The police used to raid gay bars with the excuse of cracking down on illegal activity and prostitution. But that night, people fought back, and with supporters, they rioted and protested, calling to an end of the criminalization of their lifestyles. Reportedly that night, Sylvia Rivera said to her lover, "I'm not missing a minute of this. It's the revolution." I love the story of Sylvia Rivera because she was someone who did not apologize for her non-conforming gender identity or for her identity as a Latina. Very often we idealize social movements, but social movements also have their limitations sometimes. And Sylvia Rivera was someone who revealed the limitations of the gay liberation movement in the 70s and who pushed against them for herself and for trans people and people of color who were not on the movement's agenda. Sylvia Rivera was politicized by the Stonewall riots. She was inspired by them, and she joined the Gay Activist Alliance and the Gay Liberation Front in fighting for non-discrimination ordinance in housing and employment in New York City. However, as a trans Latina woman of Puerto Rican and Venezuelan background, she was an outlier in the movement, which benefited mainly gay white men. And on the other hand, she was also shunned by lesbian feminists who saw trans women as a sort of caricature of womanhood and thought that that was sexist. So, feeling the cold shoulder from both sides, she shifted gears and she joined forces with her friend Marsha P. Johnson. And together they founded STAR, which stands for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. STAR was a militant group and a youth shelter for trans teenagers. And that was a very important thing for Sylvia. It was crucial because she herself knew how vulnerable trans teenagers went. I feel that by telling her story, others will feel as inspired as I am by her struggle and her willingness to fight for people with similar life experiences to hers. And her vision to join forces with different social movements, recognizing those moments of intersectionality. Latina history is American history.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Sylvia Rivera. I'm co-founder of Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which is now Street Transgender Action Revolutionaries. and my co-founder was Marsha P. Johnson.
What about the issues of that? There's a lot of organizations that have included T in their bill, like lesbian, gay, bi, and trans. Is there real inclusiveness, or is it just a smokescreen? How do you feel about it?
No, that's the bottom line. It's a big smoke screen. This movement has become so capitalist. It is a capitalist movement. I see this movement becoming a straight gay movement that only believes in that almighty dollar. Now, what kind of logic is this? I don't understand. We do not owe the straight community a damn thing, so why should we be giving them our money? I feel highly offended. So, what is the purpose of us? Not us, because this is no longer my pride. I gave them their pride, but they have not given me mine. But what is the purpose of them celebrating their pride and giving straight people who still really don't accept the community, the gay and lesbian community, for what they are, but they want that almighty dollar of ours?
Sylvia Rivera. She was an iconic trans activist who also happened to be at Stonewall in 1969, June 28th, the night of the big uprising.
On July 2nd, 1951, at 2:30 in the morning, in a taxi cab in the old Lincoln Hospital parking lot. The old queen couldn't wait. She said, I'm ready to hit the streets. My grandmother used to always joke about that. I said, yeah. I said, you see why I'm always standing out on the street corner? That's good. And then I came out feet first.
You did?
Yes.
So you landed on
So I was ready.
So from, let's say, up until 69, you weren't involved in gay rights or any of that stuff, were you?
Before the Stonewall, I was involved in the Black Liberation Movement, the peace movement. I just felt that I had the time, and I knew that I had to do something. And then when the Stonewall happened,
You were 18 years old then. You were still a kid by the time.
Yes, it was like a God sent thing to me. I mean, I just happened to be there when it all jumped off. I said, oh, well, great. I said, now it's my time.
They were Laverne dog about.
I think about Sylvia and Marsha. I think what I owe to them, this history of struggle, this history of fighting and being pushed aside and fighting some more and never giving up on the fight. And I think it's so important for us to remember them and remember the truth of their lives and the truth of their struggle so that we don't repeat this disregard for certain people and certain populations. It took some street queens and hustlers to fight back against the police on that fateful day in 1969. And that moment was a catalyst for a movement that has brought us years later marriage equality, and hopefully will bring us equal protections for trans people on a federal level. When we think about the truth of their lives and how they struggled and how they lived, I think it should be a lesson. And their example was to love and give no matter what. Star's legacy is that.
Sylvia Rivera, original name Ray Rivera Mendoza. I was born in 1951. I had a mother and I had a father. In 1953, my mother decided to try to off herself. At the same time, she tried to kill me. She knew I was going to have a very hard life. And yes, I've had a very hard struggle. I tell these stories of my life because I know that my children, in later years, my transgender community will understand. We have to stand up and speak for ourselves. We have to fight for ourselves.
Sylvia and I talked about it when she was in the hospital, and really neither one of us could come up with why we, of all people, stayed friends for 33 years. I've always said we were the oddest of odd couples, but I was in my 40s at that time. Sylvia was 19. Sylvia was basically a Puerto Rican street drag queen. We didn't have transgendered people in those days. I was a WASP who had come out of the establishment. Stonewall was peculiar. It meant many things to many people. Here was a riot, and here, for the first time, first time any of us was seeing gays fight back. I think one of the things that impressed Sylvia most was the line of street kids doing the Rockette, "We Are the Stonewall Girls," because this was in total defiance. This was getting out and saying to the world, to the police, to everybody, I'm a little faggot. And it was, we are the Stonewall Girls. We wear our hair in curls. We don't wear underwear. We show our pubic hair. It certainly was the turning point in the life of Sylvia.
One aspect of Sylvia's activism going all the way back to 1970 in Star House was the specific issue of dealing with the homeless transgender population.
Star House came out of the organization STAR, which stood for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And it was the brainstorm of Sylvia, Marsha P. Johnson, and Bubbles Rose Lee.
Marsha and Sylvia got a hold of this building, and they were using it. It's sort of the model for Transy House here, in fact, as a kind of collective place for the trans girls that were out living on the street, you know, homeless. Marsha and Sylvia mothered them. I mean, they mothered everybody. So I considered Sylvia to be my mother. Everybody in this house called her Ma. I mean, she was.
And it was right here with the rally after one of the Pride marches.
It was like the 4th anniversary gay march when I was being up on stage. Y'all better quiet down.
Sylvia did grab the mic and speak, and she roared.
Revolution!
I've never seen anyone so lost. I mean, Sylvia's world had suddenly just collapsed, and Sylvia left the movement for 20 years.
I've known Sylvia informally, you might say, since 1969, 1970, the Gay Activist Alliance. We were arch enemies for the first 22 years of the 32 years we knew one another. And that is story, which I think is so remarkable. That person that I used to consider a very arch enemy or moral political enemy, someone I had no use for whatsoever, ended up becoming one of my best friends in life, and literally came in here and ran. They didn't have homeless encampments in those days.
We didn't. We slept in hallways, or either Marshall or I had a hotel room where we snuck everybody in. You know, the pier was actually established a few years before I got here. I came down to be nosy, and I moved in and took over basically as the big mother that I am. I was comfortable for a lot of years. You know, like I said, we owned the house. My lover and I did own a house. And actually what happened, you know, it's been like 3 years is when I got that telegram, the marshal was dead. I mean, I lost a lot of my incentive to do anything. When she died, part of me went with her because one of our pacts was that we would always cross River Jordan together. And to me, this is the River Jordan. This is not my first time that I've hit bottom as far as, you know, because of my drinking and whatnot. But what's giving me a lot of incentive right now is like being back in the village instead of being in Westchester and keeping myself confined from what my life has always been, is to fight for something. Because most of the kids here were alcoholics and people with AIDS. And that's one of the reasons that I stayed on for as long as I did until we got thrown out, because there were people here that really needed help, and the community was not here to help. It hurts to see that people are not being helped. I may spend the winter out here for the simple fact that if I can't see them off the street, why should I go get shelter for myself? Because right now, I have to prove a point as a Stonewall veteran. I find myself back in this situation as I look at the river a lot of times, and Marsha gives me a lot of strength. Is that I got to keep fighting for somebody. Marsha was a fighter. We were both fighters. I actually feel her spirit.
I mean, other people can talk about this better than I can. I mean, she got religion at the end of her life. She was very actively involved in the MCC.
She came to the church about 4 years ago and began attending on Sunday on a regular basis. She began volunteering in the food pantry, which serves people who are living in poverty in the city and also people living with AIDS. And eventually, the director of our food pantry resigned, and we hired Sylvia as the director of the food pantry.
All these, but I have them lined up like this. My soldiers to fight hunger.
Sylvia had a very deep passion for people living in poverty in this city, not just the trans community, not just the queer community, but anybody who didn't have the kind of housing or the kind of clothing or the kind of medical care or the kind of resources that it really takes to survive, much less live in New York City.
I can go home and say that I actually tried to make a difference. I had to do something about it.
She just had this way about her that people from all walks of life would end up here getting groceries or lunches or some kind of food or clothing or housing assistance from us. And she really helped us, I think, develop that ministry and take it the next step.
It makes me feel good that we're able to reach in the long run. It's still not enough, but every little bit helps.
The other thing that will always stick with me is when we were really wrestling with Sonda, she came to me one day and asked me if I understood what I was doing in terms of calling for an inclusive Sonda, if I knew what that meant. And I said that I did. It meant that I wouldn't leave her behind. She didn't let people go blindly into the positions that they took. She wanted to make sure that you understood what you were saying, what you might be giving up, what you might be sacrificing.
Basically, we are here to try to help. The youth in the city has struggled enough and is hurting enough where you have gay children that are thrown out into the streets, transgender children thrown out into the streets. Don't they realize that these children have suffered enough by being thrown out into the streets by their families? These are the children of our future. These children mean a lot to America and to the New York State area.
Definitely gonna do more videos on Sylvia as well. Go out, do your own research, watch that documentary, and yeah, rest in peace to Sylvia Rivera, another leader in the LGBTQ civil rights movement who helped pave the way. Can't go unnoticed. They're a guide which we should follow, that they paved the way for us. And so again, happy Women's Month. If you like this video, hit that like button, leave a comment, and if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead, subscribe. Peace. Hey. Yeah. What we do today